This is Annie Kid Wolf, and you're watching This is Punk Rock of Punk Globe Magazine.
1, 2, 3, 4. Punk rock, punk rock, punk rock. 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 It ain't brain surgery. Punk rock, punk rock, punk rock. 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 It ain't brain surgery. One, two, three, four.
Our show is called This is Punk Rock. So the idea, my friend here, Ralph SPIGHT from the Victims family. I love this band and I love all the things that Ralph does. We've done a song together on one of my albums. We wrote this crazy album at one point many years ago, and one day hopefully that will be released and finished. But yeah, welcome, Ralph. Welcome.
Thanks. Good to see you, pal.
Yeah, you too. I haven't seen you for so long. This is
I know.
fantastic. This is
Been
fantastic.
following your exploits.
Oh, I know. Me following yours too. You've been doing some cool stuff also. And you came up to Vancouver, and I was gone the day that you came up and played. I really wanted to see you guys play, but
So great to be back there. It's a great show, like really amazing. Of course,
yeah.
Dead, you know.
Yeah, they're great. But you guys are fantastic. You've been doing this for so long, and I want you to give us a little bit of history of what you've been doing in the past and what you're doing now. And I'll ask a few other questions. But yeah, like
Uh,
tell me a bit about you there, Ralph.
they all- this is where it always gets bogged down because it's like then I was So
The mayor, and then the governor, and then of
so
punk rock.
yeah, so the Victims family started in Santa Rosa in 1984 and pretty quickly started like touring in 85 and 87, did the States, and like our very first tour we had no merchandise, no nothing, no record out, no anything, just like really hardcore. I don't even know how he survived those, but anyhow, made our first record in 1986 on Mordam, and like did two more with Mordam up until 1990, and then got picked up by Alternative Tentacles when Mordam stopped being a label, and started doing stuff with Jello. Made, I don't know, several records on AT, and then we split for the first time in 1994, and wasn't really doing anything. And Larry started this other band where he was playing drums, and they were like, "We need a guitar player," and I was like, "Okay." So I ended up in Saturn's Flea Collar, which is like a completely different, like sort
Such
of
a great name.
really. I mean, half the time when we were in that band, like I was like, "This is the stupidest shit I have ever done in my life." And then I listen to that stuff now, and it's like the record we did on AT is like, to me it's incredible. I love it. It's like it's really stood the test
Yeah,
of
I've
time.
heard it. It's really good. I
It's
love it.
it's, it's fun stuff. So so then that was like that started following a pattern that Larry and I had for the next like couple of projects that we did, where it was like we did one album, like one single, one US tour, one Europe tour, and then broke up. And
And you're
then
like,
we
done. That's
we did
it.
Hellworms because like Larry was sort of like where he was playing bass again and I was playing guitar, and we got a drummer, because at the end of Saturn's he was like, I don't want to be a drummer anymore, and then again, like one, a bunch of actual Hellworms toured a lot through that time. We were sort of trying to live off it, so we were doing it pretty hardcore. Um, Toured the US, a couple of times. did a record and a couple of singles and things like that, and then Europe tour, and then broke up.
Yeah,
Then
I
we
really
got
like Hellworm. I like
yeah,
that's a great band.
fun. It's a fun record, crowd
Yep.
repellent. It's very rock and roll for us. It's like what
And
happens when.
people still get that on Alternative Tentacles,
I think so. A lot of the AT stuff for us is out of print, but we're talking to Biafra and
right?
everyone there about getting everything repressed. So,
Definitely.
um, not really sure what's still in print. But
You can get it
so
digitally, right? Digitally.
yes,
Just go.
yes,
You can go to
all the
like,
AT stuff is streaming and it's digitally uh, out there. So and then we got Victims Family back together with our friend Dave Gliza playing drums. And again, one Europe tour, one US tour, one LP, one single, and we were done
boom.
after three years or something. And then Tim Solian, our drummer, in 2004, and we've been playing together ever since. Although he does a lot of roadie stuff, so he's busy most of the time. So we've been basically playing a few shows a year, with a couple of times where we've done some tours and things like that. In the last couple of years, we've kind of tried to do a little bit more, and but we can't really maintain like a full schedule of touring and stuff. But in about, what was it, 2008, Biafra approached me about being in his band. We had actually talked about that about 10 years before, and had got. It's really funny because four of us, which was John Weiss, Billy Gould, myself, and Biafra, had gotten together 10 years previously to sort of, possibly do this. And then it came up again. And then we added Chemo Ball, who I'd played with in some other things, Plainfield and some other stuff. And he actually did a stint during the Apocalypse era Victims Family. We did a four-handed lineup, and he did
Oh, cool.
keyboards
Yeah.
as well. This is the first time we ever did like two guitar players. So then, yeah, so I made that uh, first record with Biafra, Audacity of Hype, and then Bill left like pretty much right after we recorded that. We played one more show, and then Faith No More got back together, and Andrew Weiss came in. So then, like, I don't know, it's like is it two or three LPs with Biafra and like a couple of EPs, but there's, quite a bit of stuff out there with Guantanamo School of Medicine. And, about, when was it? 2002, I started working on solo stuff, which became the first Freak Accident record. And then I've done working on the fifth LP, and there's also two EPs with the Freak Accident. So
Yeah, that's a
currently,
really great band too. I love that band. So,
thanks,
yeah,
thanks so much.
you're that's all from you, which I really love. It's your writing is fantastic. I love your writing and I love your approach and yeah, you have a great way. It's very unique, but also, accessible in a way. Like you can feel it, right? So I love your writing for sure. So I love the freak accident stuff.
I'm really excited about this new record. I think it's going to be really, really great. But it's like, I'm working on um, a lot of overdubs and vocals and things right now. So it's kind of
Definitely.
like it's slow going between getting ready to do some Victims Family shows coming up. We had confirmed some shows, and then turned out that Tim had a work thing. So we've got a sub for these West Coast shows that we're doing with Nasal Rod in March, which is like March 7th through 14th. We're playing around Northern California, Nevada, Southern California.
Will
Uh,
your tour dates be on your website?
yeah,
Okay.
Should
I'll
be.
put a link down there.
That'd be great.
Excellent. And do you know when those dates are right now?
Yeah, it's March 7th at the Phoenix Theater in Petaluma, Nasal Rod and Us. March 8th is at the Ivy Room in Albany, California. Um, and then March 9th, the Sunday, is in Reno and the Tuesday, Monday is off. The Tuesday, the 11th, is in Las Vegas at the Dive Bar.
Oh,
Um,
that's a great place.
yeah, I haven't been.
Oh,
Um,
it's
and
fun.
then uh, and then the 12th is at the Sardine in San Pedro. And then the 13th is the Crepe Place in Santa Cruz. And
Oh, so
then
you're doing a good little run. That's kind of
yeah,
cool.
it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
and it's
that's neat.
and then it's the 14th in Sacramento at Cafe Colonial.
Right on. That'll be
Yeah,
a nice little tour.
and all with Nasal Rod, which is great because we have the split LP that we did with them last year.
Yeah,
We're
that's great.
finally able to do some shows to do that,
And
and then we're doing in April. We're playing 5 shows in the East. We're doing Alexandria, Virginia, uh, Galactic Panther Gallery with Nasal Rod. Um, we're doing the Auto Bar in Baltimore with Nasal Rod. We're doing Brooklyn Made with Alice Donut and Nasal Rod.
oh,
So,
that'll be great.
which is, yeah, one of the two Alice Donut reunion shows. And then we're playing somewhere in Philly and somewhere in
That's awesome. That's a
Connecticut. So it's like 5 shows around the end of April.
well, it sounds like you got a lot going on right now, so I'd love to get this you're just all over the place, man. Love to get this out there to the people so that they can come and see you in the East and all these other shows too. But I want to ask you a couple of questions
Okay.
about punk rock.
All right.
So, when is the first time that you heard punk rock and how did you feel when you heard it and where were you?
I mean, you know, uh, so I was like 15 and 77 and pretty much in this pretty heavy stoner, vibe. And so like, I saw it on the news, this punk rock, and we're like, oh my God, that's like kind of scary. But then like I grew up in Contra Costa County. It's like the suburbs of San Francisco, and we was sort of like my mom and I by the time I was in high school, like by the time I was a junior, she like changed jobs and like went for some training. And we ended up moving to Sonoma County, to like a really like to the town of Sonoma, like a really small town. And I was pretty bored. So it was actually really not until I was 19 in 1981, um, when I was like driving around in Sonoma and Maximum Rock and Roll Radio came on. I was like, oh my God. And I heard this stuff. I mean, I was kind of edging toward like, new wave and like harder stuff. And I was always sort of like, I always thought about, there was always things in my mind that were like indicators of punk rock, like I don't know. I always liked heavy music and I was interested in, politics and weird art and stuff. So it was kind of like inevitable that I would get there, but it was sort of not really a culture of it. And then, I moved to this super small town and found like a couple of like punkers and I was like, wow, that's weird.
And did you start playing guitar when you were really young?
Yeah, I had piano lessons from the time I was like 7 or whatever. Um, until I was about, I don't know, for a few years. I had like this major accident where I had like stitches I went through a window when I was 4 and like almost died. And they did, this for physical therapy. But like everybody in my family was musical anyway. My mom played piano and like, my brother played piano and guitar and everybody did something. And like my dad played. And so uh, yeah, and then I picked up guitar, I guess. I kept sneaking into my brother's room to sort of like, figure out and looking at his records and looking at like Lou Reed Rock and Roll Animals. See, that was like an early like, what is this, man?
Yeah.
Came on that cover like all fucking out like now. It's just
And
like,
it's also funny too to think about like the punk rock roots, like talking to everybody for these interviews. It's really neat because, how the music, how we were all influenced is, bands that weren't classified as punk rock maybe, but they definitely, helped us into that movement, right? Because punk
yeah,
rock was a sound, but also a movement too,
right.
right? So,
Absolutely.
so yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
how
think,
did you
I
feel
think,
about that? Oh,
yeah, I think it's a longer term project or idea, that idea of it as a movement rather than typically a sound. I mean, obviously, I'm one of those people that, I mean, one of my things is I've just never really wanted to fully define or rein in like whatever, my little sound is, right? Like
yeah.
maybe you can tell what I do, but stylistically, I kind of go over a lot of things, which I think is, I mean, people don't always appreciate that.
Oh, I think it's great. I think that that's one of the things that about Jello, why Jello really appreciates your music and you as a guitar player is because of that, right? Because of all those styles together. And
I think that's, I mean, I think, you look at, there's a lot of bands that do that. I mean, I think there's like, you can either explore a lot of stuff as a musician and like, and try a lot of things, or I think conversely, I think there's something to be said for like you find your thing and you just do it. Like, I mean, you look at like Ramones, right? Like it's the classic example of like they just did that thing. There's a little bit of like, oh, what if we tried to sound like this, but it's still us, you know?
yeah.
And I think there's something really cool about that if you like find the parameters of your, sound or whatever. But I think more broadly, in order to keep, and I think it's been the thing that's kept punk rock engaging as a movement versus a sound,
Mhm.
is just the fact that people will, um, you know, co-opt different parts of different sounds or whatever. And maybe that has the effect of creating like little subcultures, but uh,
Definitely.
but ultimately, I think as long as people are sort of, I think it remains vital because people bring new stuff into it, uh,
Hmm.
and again, it's sort of like uh, there's really no substitute for like just kicking people's ass with something that's loud and fast, right? So
Hmm.
there's
And because of punk as a movement is so in your face political, that there was a lot of that happened, and I think that kind of just went hand in hand. People like Jello, really brought that into the forefront, right? And
yeah,
so there was a lot of people that were like, "Yeah, this is wrong. Oh my God," And we were also talking with other people about the do it yourself thing around punk rock. Like punk rock was more of something that was here, let's do it ourselves. So how did that influence you? Like, did you start with doing it yourself and kind of like put up posters and do all the kind of stuff? Like, tell me a little bit about the do it
sure.
yourself.
I mean, like, yeah, and I think in the beginning we did a lot of that kind of stuff. But I think there was this real whirlwind for us. I mean, I think that um, we were very fortunate that Ruth Schwartz picked us up right away to do like our first album right away. Because if that hadn't happened, I don't know that we would have had the resources or the brain power or the drive to get it done ourselves. Like I've looked at other people, the way they've done records or anything. So we were very fortunate in that angle, but like we definitely, especially coming from Santa Rosa, which was not, Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, Petaluma, all those places, there was no scene. Like there was nothing. you know, like we were playing backyard parties, we were playing, keggers, we were playing. I mean, the one cool thing about coming from that area was that, there was a lot of space, there was a lot of, weird like farms and places out in the middle of nowhere that you could play. You could always find some weird shed to rent from somebody to rehearse. So, like, in that sense, I mean, I think people in smaller towns and in smaller scenes, you look at it and, there's a way that not being in like sort of an urban area can really support you in doing it. Um, but so in that sense, I think we got very much involved. And I was working at this record store in Santa Rosa, and the person who owned the record store, she put on lots of she brought like everybody to Sonoma County to the River Theater in Guerneville. Like we had like fucking Butthole Surfers and Black Flag and like every fucking buddy played in goddamn Guerneville on the Russian River, like, like totally like Nowheresville. And like hundreds of people would, come out, the Crow Mags, like, like
Wow.
all these fucking crazy shows that were out there.
What
Sort
year
of,
would this be?
this would have been around, let's see, so this would have been 83, 84, you know. So yeah, yeah,
Wow, yeah. So that you are right at the core. That's wonderful because,
yeah,
you take I just I find it so fascinating people's stories and coming through punk rock and going from band to band or situation to situation. Like we all played shows together and people played on each other's albums and all of that kind of stuff. And punk rock is really started out as a community in a lot of ways, right? Whether you were just in a small little area, it was still a sense of community. Like there was,
sure.
everyone who was a punk rocker, you knew who they were in your town, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't many. So it definitely had that sense of community. So I'm always interested in knowing like how that changed you. And so for me today, I would like to know, what does punk mean to you today? Because I'm sure it's changed, right? I'm sure it changed from, being young to today, right? And looking at the world differently with a lot more experience and, tours under your belt and all kinds of albums and record labels and all that stuff. Like what is the actual
Well,
movement
it's
you think
funny
it
because I think that you brought up the idea of DIY, and uh, I feel like that's really the core of what the movement has meant, right? Because like I DIY much more stuff than I did like in the very beginning of Victim's Family in terms of like records. Like I'm working on my own, like I put out the last few Freak Accident records myself, like we just play every shitty little fucking show and save every dime and like, you know what I mean? Like we will just play fucking anywhere and save that 60 bucks, that $100, like, oh, we got a show with paid 400. We sold a bunch of shit,
Yeah.
like and we got really super tight on that. And I think if you look at what has happened with the business of music, like I think it's obvious that we won. Like, we like the thing that we predicted with punk rock, or the thing that we had to do just out of necessity, is the dominant thing. Because like, I mean, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, we have to stop romancing this idea. Like, I'm online and people are like, talking about record deals and all this shit. And people need to stop romancing this idea that like someone's going to come in and do this thing for you. Like, the best way to get people to pay attention to you playing music is to prove to them that you don't need them. Like, and it's like, and so my thing is like, um, so for me, probably the most lasting thing is in punk rock, having to do with a philosophy, is really just the idea that no one is going to do it for me, and um, and no one cares about it as much as I do either. So like the thing is if I want the message put across the way that, I want it put across, like whatever. It's not like people are beating down my door to put out records anyway. But it's like I just think um that there's something really.
But you have put out some great albums and you write incredible music. So it's not really, I mean, people beating down doors is like one thing, but like you have a history. I mean, I did an interview the other day for my album and the person was asking me about the victim's family. Like I was like, because I'm on Alternative Tentacles. So they were asking me questions like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, Ralph and the victim's family. Like, everyone loves the
Yeah,
victim family. So it's like,
totally.
you
And I
know,
think I'm again, I'm not whatever. Like I'm very grateful for like the opportunities that have been given for us, but like to do the full broad expression of like sort of all the things that I want to do like takes DIY energy, and you get out there and you book the shows and all these things. And I think I mean it's to the point where I play in uh I've had a few people through the lineup of the freak accident. You know what I mean? It's had like, I don't know, like probably five complete lineup changes in 20 21 years. It's like so I mean, and it hasn't always been going. So, but um the common thing is like I or when I've played in other projects, I can't relate to people that haven't, I can't play music with people that haven't been in punk rock. Like I can't relate to it, even if I'm like playing jazz with somebody. You know what I mean? Like I can't, or attempting to. You know what I mean? Like, um, I there's just a thing about like if you've never been in a punk band or like played some like crappy show where somebody's like spitting on you or like like trying to jump on the stage or steal your shit or like whatever, you know if you haven't had those kind of like road tested experiences, like there's a certain like entitlement almost about like the way that it's sort of um like I'll fucking play anywhere pretty much, you know what I mean? Like to my own detriment, right? Like I'll pretty much take a lot of shit. It takes a lot for me to be like, I'm not gonna. I mean, there's certain venues I won't touch, right?
you're also a musician, and a lot of musicians, they want to play, right? They
Yeah,
love playing. So it's like whether they go to rehearsal, whether they play a show, whether they do everything, they want to
yeah,
play. And I notice that that's a big thing in the punk rock scene too, is that people
right,
just want to play. Like they're like,
yeah,
oh yeah, play my brother's house, or we're gonna get fucked up, and whatever the case is,
right.
right? And yeah, as you get, older or get more experience, you pick and choose what you want to do, but you've done massive shows with Jello and with the victims family, and so if you have a project that you can just do anything with, it's kind of probably fun for you. Is that the case?
Totally. And
Or-
but the other thing is, yeah, absolutely. Like you can burn yourself out like doing that stuff, and that's that's a very real possibility. However, the other side of that is if you don't take those risks, then you don't end up playing like that weird fucking show where randomly like 500 people showed up and freaked out and like and you had a great time and everybody got paid and like had what I mean?
yeah,
Uh,
an experience, right? An incredible
I mean
experience.
if you don't, there's no, this is the thing, there's nothing that isn't had to have risk attached to it. And
Yep.
so I think that that's the thing about punk rock, whether it's musically or just what shows you're going to, but like there's always this like risk element in. And I feel like as a musician with Victim's Family, I was getting interviewed for some other thing, and I kind of compared us to like this high wire act. Like, you never know if it's like if we're gonna like fall off the thing, and then because it's like hanging by a thread a lot of the time when we're doing something really intense and, you can't hear and it's weird and like, and sometimes shit falls apart, and, uh, and I like that. There's like,
Energy, right? I think that's got a lot to do with punk rock too, is the energy.
oh
And
yeah.
whether it's, and what I was going to ask you is the political side of punk rock. Were you influenced by politics, playing music with different people, or does that come into your life in any way, or has that come into your musical career?
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think I was alluding to it earlier. I mean, um, my mother was like very political, very creative, very, like very secular humanist, like escaped the Catholic Church kind of person and and really instilled a lot of, political um awareness in me um and so that was already sort of a thing. I mean, I would not say I'm much of an activist, uh, but but it's always been something that's in the forefront of my, my thinking and of my music. And so it was a natural fit when, you know, I started hearing punk rock and people were talking about things and Reagan and all that shit, it was just like fucking. And then, we look at what's going on now and like, I don't think I can afford that, maybe that stance of like, I'm not much of an activist because I think
Yeah, we
we're
have.
all in that place where it's like, it's like, it's time to put up or shut up. So,
It's a bit terrifying.
yeah, it really is, and,
And that was what I was going to ask you is how does the politics of today affect your music today?
um, I mean, I'm always writing about it, and I think one issue a little bit is in terms of responding is just like being able to respond in real time, because it just when you're making records, it just there's a certain time element, there's like a time lag between, so uh I would like to figure out ways to maybe respond a little quicker, as it's but it's also sort of the way that I conceive of music and lyrics and writing and the philosophy around it. It's just like I think that I don't know. I mean, especially as I'm getting older, like I really want to inspire people um, to to take action or to and it's strange with the current administration. Uh, I think it's also new and it's all happening so fast. What's going on? Uh,
So quickly.
that that it's been sort of a moment where like I'm trying to find out what I'm trying to figure out what is my best response, right? What's the artistic response? What's the political response? Like you know, what how should I be responding? And I think inherent in that uh, is really taking care of like my mental health, really taking care of like, I'm a recovering person. And so like I really have to take care of that baseline stuff,
Hmm.
and I'm in my fucking 60s now, so it ain't no joke. Like I get sick and I like get hit by a car on my bike and like, shit's always happening and I'm like
Yeah.
recovering or whatever. But, and you got to stay healthy mentally and physically and all those things. in order to be useful in doing these things, right?
And would that be your message to young punks of today? Like, what would be your message if you could just say to anyone and all the people out there and give them a message, whether they're young punks wanting to play music or do tour or do whatever? What is your idea of what advice and message could you give to people, to musicians, to whoever you want?
Well, depends on what the topic is, really.
Yeah.
I mean, with playing music,
Anything burning in you that you feel like as far as like when I said about political stuff or what you're doing in life, like, you mentioned recovery or you mentioned, different things through the interview. And I know you're a yoga guy and I know that you do a lot of stuff, but I'm just wondering if you, Ralph Spite, has a message that you want to give out to people right now.
I mean, I really think that the message in punk rock is you can do anything you want. Like you can, I mean, I want to inspire people to know that, that they can take those chances, that they can, you know, that they can take those risks. Like, I want to be a person that's backing up the people that are around me. I want to, like, to me, ultimately, the whole thing, is fucking, it's about like love and community. Like, I go out to shows, I see the same fucking people, and I love those people. You know what I mean? Like, uh, and, and that's very important. And that, like, we uh, absolutely need to band together about that, like the things that we have in punk rock, like by and large, like most of us, like we got more in common than we don't. And, you know, so many people have sort of, I mean, surprised me in terms of like their kind of public persona for what they do with music versus like where their political and philosophical heads are at. Like it's actually been kind of really interesting to watch various people that I wouldn't have suspected. I can't really think of a lot of them right now, or don't really want to name check a bunch of people, but like it's that I wouldn't have expected to articulate like uh, the message, that needs to be said. Like, so I think, I'm here for it uh, with people that are being marginalized here. Like, I think that that's really, I think that has to be one of our core messages, in punk rock, is that like we are here, we're a safe space, like we are a place for people to explore themselves and be different. And I think it's just like vitally important um,
I
that
agree.
we're doing that,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
it's scarier and scarier. But the other thing that kind of comes up, and I remember, it's interesting because um, just because, like, I remember in the early 80s in San Francisco, I mean, there was a whole raft of like, right wing, like Nazi fuckers at shows, like beating people up and stuff like this. This has happened before. Like, we've lived through this, like to some degree, and
Mm.
already. And so I, you know, I'm scared for the future of how things are, but I believe in us as a community and as a culture. I really think our hearts are in the right places.
Yeah, that's a great message. That really is. And I agree with you. I think that it's a time that we need to fight back and we need to stand up and we need to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, right? So, yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming in here and telling us a bit about what you're doing right now. And I look forward to hearing the new stuff. I definitely want to hear that new Freak Accident. and definitely will draw the people to the Victims Family shows because you guys are pretty powerful. And yeah, I love Victims Family and everything that you do. You do a lot of great stuff, and you brought so much into Jello's band, and just I know how much he loved your sound, and how important, how picky he is. So it was very critical, right? So
There, you said
uh,
it.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so thank you so much for being here, Punk Globe, and we look forward to coming out to your show when you come back to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Ralph, and have an
Yeah.
awesome night. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.